Greetings. This is Dr. Jimmy. Now you can see me. Hello. Yes, this is Dr. Jimmy, and this is my 8th video in the history of Halloween Horror Nights 21. And, lurking on the top of Castle Bob, there's Bob the Evil Cat. What the hell is she doing? Looks like she was licking herself. Well, you'd do it too if you could reach. Anyway, cat thing, after all. And so this is, of course, as I said, the 8th video in my history of Halloween Horror Nights 21. But first, of course, as there are some of you out there who are quite fascinated with my shirt choices, believing there's some sort of hidden clue. I don't even do those anymore, but let's just get on with what's become a ritual now in my videos. Oh look, what happens at Bill and Ted's stays at Bill and Ted's. And on the back, of course, we have, you can see it, there's Bill and Ted themselves, and it says near the bottom it's the 20th anniversary. The 20th anniversary show, which was at Halloween Horror Nights 21. Oh my god, there's a connection to the material I'm covering in this video. Oh my god, just a coincidence. This was the shirt on the top of the 14 stacks of t-shirts I've got in various drawers. This was at the top of stack number 10, which came up today in the rotation. And that was that shirt. Just happened to be a shirt which I did in fact purchase at Halloween Horror Nights 21. The 20th anniversary, yes, of Bill and Ted. The Bill and Ted show started at Halloween Horror Nights 2 back in 1992 and was held at Universal Studios Florida every single year since then. And so the event at 21 in 2011 was the 20th Bill and Ted show, even though it was the 21st Horror Night. Get it? Right. Yes, Halloween Horror Nights 21. What a marvellous year with Lady Luck. And of course, I didn't actually say this before, but you know the logo. I talked about it. You know the logo of the 21 in the spade, the spade from the playing cards, suit or trump or pip or whatever you want to call it. You know they chose that. The Lady Luck, of course, a product of marketing and development, playing on the 21 from, of course, gambling and card games, because 21 is a very significant number in certain card games, particularly blackjack, which is often played in casinos. And you don't have to count cards like Rain Man if you want to win at blackjack. I have a fail-proof system. It's called How to Beat the Dealer at Blackjack. It's very simple. Beat the dealer with a blackjack! It might be frowned upon in some casinos, I'm afraid. A bit of... oh well. There was supposed to be a Halloween Horror Nights character called Blackjack, by the way. He was Jack the Clown's brother from another mother. I'm not kidding. They actually had this character, along with many other very weird versions of Jack and his extended clown family, planned for 2001, but they tossed them aside, and they came up with Eddie, who eventually got tossed aside, and Jack was replacing him again, so it went full circle. But I recently got a chance to read one of Michael Roddy's story treatments, J. Michael Roddy's story treatments for what they didn't use, including some of the other members of Jack's weird family, and some of which were in rather poor taste. Wacko Jacko, who wore one sequined glove and liked children. Oh dear. Let's skip over that. It gets a bit poor taste, especially since the man's been dead for a few years now. Although at the time he wasn't. Yes. So, what does that have to do with Halloween Horror Nights 21? Nothing at all. Let's get on with the houses. We finished half the houses. Maybe we can get at least one more done in this video. So let's continue to the 5th house of the event, which was called Souls and Steam Into the Machine, and it was located in the Jaws queue area. And it's a poignancy just in where it was located, because the Jaws queue area, of course, the original location for Halloween Horror Nights houses, original location way back in 1991. The first ever haunted maze was in the Dungeon of Terror, was located in the Jaws queue area, and they had a house there for a couple of years. When Jaws reopened in '93, well, they used the entire queue area for people going on the ride itself, which is always a lot of fun. Yes, riding the Shark in the Dark is always a... Well, I used to ride it at Horror Nights, and so because it would be open. Shark in the Dark, we used to call it. Lots of fun riding the Shark at Horror Nights. And so the attraction continued until the year 2012. On January 2nd, 2012 was the very last Jaws ride. And a lot of lucky people got to ride it on the very last time, and it was Shark in the Dark because it was, of course, at the end of the day, at night time, that January at night when the park was closing, the last bunch who rode it. Yay, we're on Jaws! That's the last group, including my friend Chris Redfield, not his real name, of course, rode it. I did not. Why did I not ride it that fateful evening? I was not in Florida. It makes it rather difficult to get on the ride if you're in another state. A state of insanity. Now, I was in the state of South Carolina, and I did come back here that day, but by the time I got here, it was a long travel on the train, and I was rather tired. I wasn't fit to go to Universal that night. I couldn't do it. Missed the last Jaws ride. So when was my last Jaws ride? During Halloween Horror Nights 21, of course. Shark in the Dark probably on the very last night of the event, most likely, which I believe was Halloween night itself, Halloween of 2011, probably just before or just after the last Bill and Ted. Actually, we ran and did Forsaken one last time at least before we went out that night. So I did see that house, me and Chris, and no one else in the house. One of those kind of walkthroughs on the very last thing we did that year. But sometime early in the evening, we did go on the Jaws ride, and that was my last ride on the Jaws ride. I didn't know it would be my last ride at the time, although of course the fingerprint was on the wall, because we knew from various leaked sources. I'm looking at you, Orlando United. There's a reason you don't get media. You know, Hate to Fly or Bryman or whoever it was who leaked a lot of Potter information once upon a time. We knew what was coming. We didn't know it would come so quickly. Come quickly, that's like premature ejaculation, that is, yeah. And all of a sudden there'd be no more Shark in January, but it happened. And of course, soon, in 2012, the whole Amity village was laid waste, which of course caused problems for Halloween Horror Nights 22, but we haven't got there yet. No, we haven't got there yet, so let's get back to it. It's very poignant though, and this was the very last house in that area, the Jaws queue area. It'd been used twice in the earliest years, and then every single year from 2006 to 2011, therefore 8 times. This was the 8th house in that location, because I'm an anal nerd who counts things. So that was it. Well, but it was not just the last, it was also a first. Yes, it was a first in house concepts, because you see, many times in the past there have been scare zones affiliated with particular haunted houses. For example, I mentioned in 2010, Zombie Grawl was directly related to the storyline of Zombiegeddon adjacent to it. Likewise, in 2008, there had been, of course, a haunted house called the Body Collectors, Collections of the Past, and right outside was the Streets of Blood. It was almost like a continuation of the House in the Streets. In some ways, Fractured Tales that same year was a continuation of Scary Tales, Once Upon a Nightmare. And so we do have that sort of thing have happened before, and we've also had scare zones presented that were follow-ups to haunted houses of previous years. So sequels to the haunted houses in the form of scare zones. And most notably in 2006 there was the Vampire Masquerade, whatever it was called, which was a sequel to Castle Vampire from 2004. There was also a Deadtropolis scare zone that year, City Under Siege or something like that, which was a sequel to the Deadtropolis house in 2004. So we had sequel scare zones. In fact, just last year there was a Scary Tales scare zone sequel to 3 previous Scary Tale houses. So that sort of thing had happened, but and continues to. But in 2011, for the very first time, there was a haunted house that was a sequel to a scare zone. Never before had something that started as a scare zone get further developed and made into an actual house. This was the first time they did that. How exciting. So we started with the scare zone, which was Souls and Steam back in 2010. And now a year later, Souls and Steam got worked into a house. Souls and Steam into the machine. Yes. Bob's come over here now. She's trying to get up behind. Can't do that, Kitty. She wants to get behind the computer and chew on wires because she feels like I'm neglecting her. So I'm going to hold her. I'm holding the cat. Yes, she's pissed off. She doesn't like that. Ooh, Bob is... See, observe the pissed off cat. Meow. She has a look of disdain and contempt. But I will pet her nevertheless. Until she bites me, which she's about to do, but she hasn't quite thought about it yet. The consequences of biting Jimmy could be dire. After all, he's the one that feeds her and cleans her litter box and other things that cats require for their basic needs. Yes, silly cat. Enough of that. So, Souls and Steam into the machine. Now, therefore, it is also set in the wonderful alternate reality world of New Yorkshire, which is a parallel world where it's all run on Steam, a steampunk universe. New Yorkshire being, of course, an equivalent of New York City, I suppose, but one that's all run on Steam, and everybody dresses in leather and brass with big goggles and gears and everything, like a steampunk fun. Yes, that sort of thing. So, into this world, of course, there has come a terrible drought, a water shortage, which is, of course, dire consequence for the whole economy and everything, the industry running on steam. Where are we going to get the water to run the machines? Well, human beings are, 90% water, aren't they? And there's lots of human beings running about. There's no shortage of them, so victims are seized and are processed, and every last drop of moisture, yes, every bit of blood, sweat, tears, urine, and other nasty bodily fluids which I shall not mention, are removed. Every bit of moisture, as what's left, is compressed into dust and thrown away, and all the lovely water is used to run the steam for the machines to continue the world of the future, or whatever time period. Steampunk, a future that looks like the past. Yeah, basically. So, we have that interesting scenario from Souls and Steam back in 2010. And they put it into a house, but they give it a killer twist. It's called The Horizon. Oh, The Horizon. And I cannot help but believe that this was a little bit of a Disney parody. In fact, it seems to me there was more than a bit of Disney parody going on during this whole event of Halloween Horror Nights. When I mentioned before that the house, Haunting of Hawthorne Cemetery, had a lot of similarities to the queue area for the Haunted Mansion. And there's another haunted house we'll come to that has some similarities to another very popular attraction over at Disney, at least in the architecture and the whole aesthetic. It reminded me of that quite a bit. But here in this one, there was a little bit of a parody on some of the whole basic philosophy of Walt Disney himself, because in addition to being an animator, creating happy little characters like Mickey Mouse and Goofy.
No, Your Honor,
I didn't say I was divorcing my wife because she was crazy. I said she was fucking goofy. Sorry, couldn't help it. Anyway, where the fuck was I? Oh yes, digression. Yes, Disney, of course, had a dream. He had many of them, but one in particular. He dreamed not only of making these animated characters and recreating the past in his theme parks. Remember, there was also a Tomorrowland looking into the future. And part of the whole idea of Tomorrowland was that through technology, we could create a great future utopia. And in the World's Fair of 1964 and 1964 World's Fair, he came up with an idea of this wonderful city of tomorrow that you could see as you went through the People Mover. In fact, they installed that city of tomorrow in the very same People Mover at other parks, including the Magic Kingdom. I think it might still be there, and you might see that model. That's supposed to be the great city of tomorrow that Disney envisioned. And he even named it Epcot. Supposedly one night he's sitting in bed and the word comes to him and he yells it out, and his wife Lillian goes, "What the hell are you talking about, Walt?" And he says, "Epcot, experimental prototype community of tomorrow." Yes, an experimental city of tomorrow, today, and it would have all the great technology, and this would be the prototype, the experiment, the test tube of a future world where everyone will be perfect and happy in every way, because there'll be no minorities. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. But anyway, but it's a perfect city of the future, and this was one of his great dreams. He was actually going to build the city itself in Florida next to his Disney Magic Kingdom that he built here. That was his original idea, and of course then he died in the middle of the 1960s and never saw that dream come to fruition. Well, wait a minute, isn't there an Epcot Center at Disney World? Of course there is. That has nothing to do with an actual city. No one actually lives there. It's not a real city. It's sort of a cross. It's sort of like an old World's Fair, like the ones they did in 1964 in New York. You have a big exposition of technology and little showcase of different cultures around the world. It's exactly like that, a permanent World's Fair idea, an exposition. And even that has changed over the years, of course, as more and more some of the rather interesting things they came up with in 1983 have been retrofitted with Disney characters. So now it's no longer, these fascinating attractions. They become much more entertaining, and yet in some ways they've lost something. Putting things like Elsa into Norway or the Three Caballeros into Mexico, it's kind of cheapened it in some ways. That's my critical review of that trend, which nevertheless brings in lots and lots of money, and that's why it's being done, of course. But there was one interesting exhibit, or a pavilion, which no longer exists. They replaced it with Mission into Space a couple of years ago. It was called Horizons. And this was very much into Walt's idea of the future community. You'd go into Horizons and then you could choose one of 3 different utopian societies in the future you would visit. Your ride vehicle, actually you get to vote. Which one are you going to go to at the end of it, for the very end. But while you're traveling, you do travel to the 3 different communities. One's out in the desert, a desert community that has, I guess, these a biodome or something, and they grow this wonderful lush land under the desert sun. One is undersea, an undersea city of the future, kind of like Bioshock. We'll get to that in a minute. And one's in outer space, a space colony. So you get to see all 3 of these, and then at the end, on your way back to the present, you get to vote. And everyone picks the one they want, and whoever wins, that's what you get through the video that plays as your vehicle rides back, either through the desert, through the sea, or through outer space. I always like the space one best, but sometimes the people in the car will vote for something else. So that was a wonderful attraction, and I cannot help but think they chose this name, the Horizon, as a direct parody of that old attraction. And I think that because it was indeed a Disney-esque community of tomorrow. And the whole idea was that New Yorkshire, they were sending people to this new city of tomorrow, this utopian experimental community of tomorrow called the Horizon. And they needed volunteers, strong young people with brilliant minds and athletic bodies to go and colonize this new city, this new community. And when you entered the haunted house, the first thing you see are all these posters, this kind of artwork which looks a bit like fascist artwork, but also reminds you of the early Epcot pictures when it was Future World back when they first opened in the early 80s. And there's a model of the city of the future, the Horizon, which reminds you of the one that I mentioned earlier. And it's all there, and you're supposed to be signing up to volunteer. But the Horizon is a lie. Yes. And we'll get to that in part 9.